Welcome to a software demonstration brought to you by QPSMR Limited, suppliers of the QPSMR software suite for market research and analysis. Sample management and quota control. This is the second of 4 videos designed for those who are interested in using QPSMR for telephone interviewing. Following on from the first video where we modified the entries in a questionnaire for CATI, we will now look at sample management and quota control. Sample management is used to issue the contact details of potential respondents to your interviewers, either at random or by sample point. It also ensures a history is kept of the contacts made. Sample records are often supplied electronically as a spreadsheet file, so we will begin by looking at an example file and how to include the information in our CATI project. After opening the sample file in our spreadsheet program, we can see columns containing the contact name, 3 address fields, and the postcode. The next column contains the telephone number, and the last column holds the region, which we will use as a sample point and also in our quota. When working with electronic sample, the telephone number must be handed in to an entry called telnum, which we copied into our coffee questionnaire from the skeleton QDF in the first telephone interviewing video. This is because QPSMR telin used by your interviewers recognises the name telnum and will dial the number if appropriate TAPI3 compatible software and hardware for auto dialing is available. Note that the QPSMR telin software can also act as a client to a Windows socket server dialer, often just called WinSock, so predictive dialing can be used if you have suitable equipment. We will start by updating our CATI QDF file to include the extra questions needed to store the name and address details. It is important to position these new sample management questions after the sample start TTT entry and before telnum. Firstly, we will insert a new question to store the respondent's name, which we will call contact. For the entry text, we will type contact name. As we wish to hand in the text from our sample file, we will select the entry type character text and in the width box overtype 70, meaning the entry will be able to hold 70 characters of text. Now to create the next entries, which will hold the address details from the sample file. We will select New, duplicate this entry and change the name of the duplicated entry to be add1 and the text to be address1. Then again we select New, duplicate this entry, note the name is automatically changed to add2 and update the text. Then we repeat the process for the third address line and for the postcode. This time changing the name, text and the width to be just 8 characters. Next we will add a new entry called region and also enter the text. As we wish to use the region as a sample point and in our quota, the entry must be single coded. If we switch tasks and look again at the sample file, we can select the entire file and then sort it by the column containing the region texts. We can see that there are 5 different regions: Midlands, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast and Southwest. So switching back to QPSMR, we allocate a width of 1 to hold a single response number between 1 and 5. Next we select the Responses tab to enter the response texts. We will make response 1 Northwest, response 2 Northeast, response 3 Midlands, response 4 Southwest, and response 5 southeast. Then finally we use the Settings tab to click the CATI, sample point and quota entry checkboxes, then close and save. All entries required to hold the sample information have now been created, as well as the telnum entry to store the telephone number. The ZZZ entries needed for sample management were copied from the skeleton QDF file in the previous video. To recap, these are ZZZ SST to hold the status of the sample, contact successful or failed, ZZZ STR to log the number of times the sample has been tried, ZZZ SR0 to hold the result of the last contact made, entries ZZZ SR1 to 9 to hold the result of the previous 9 calls, entries ZZZ DT0 to 9 to store the call dates, and entries ZZZ TM0 to 9 to store the call times. Our CATI questionnaire is now complete, so we format the electronic sample file. Firstly, every record must have a serial number. In the electronic sample file, this must be stored in column A, so we will insert a new blank column and enter serial numbers starting with 1 and ending with 50. Next, we will insert a row to add the entry name headers at the top of each column. The names must be identical to the entry names in our questionnaire, and the first serial column must be serial. If you remember, we called the name entry contact and the address entries add 1, add 2, add 3 and postcode. As the next column contains the telephone numbers, this column and the corresponding entry in our questionnaire must be named telnum. The final column in our sample file contains the region texts. As this will be retained for reference only, we will call it region, but surround the name with less than and greater than markers. This is because QPSMR will not permit these characters in entry names, so we can be sure a name containing them will never be used in a questionnaire file. Then, as we are using the region as a sample point, and sample point entries must be single coded, we will allocate response codes in a new column labelled region. In our QPSMR questionnaire file, we use the responses 1 for northwest, 2 for northeast, 3 for Midlands, 4 for southwest, and finally 5 for southeast. All columns in our file have now been labelled. For your own projects, if you have extra columns of information which you do not wish to include in your questionnaire, you can simply ignore them. If, however, your sample file contains headers, it is important to ensure that the names for unwanted columns do not match any entry names used in your questionnaire file. Remember, you can surround the names with less than and greater than markers to make sure they are ignored. As we have now finished updating the sample file, all we have to do is to save it as a comma delimited CSV file. Then we can close the spreadsheet program, keeping the CSV format, but we don't need to save again as we have just saved the file. Our CSV sample file is now ready to hand in to our CATI questionnaire. To do this, we will use the toolbar icon to switch from QPSMR Companion to QPSMR CATI and open a new data file which will hold the sample information. To protect this data, the program will automatically set the data files exist switch on. The sample data file should be stored in the same folder as our QDF file. So checking the correct folder path has automatically been selected, we type the data file name coffee CATI sample.asc. We recommend you always use this format, that is, the project name followed by one space followed by the word sample with a capital S. Once we have typed the name, we click open and yes, followed by OK, to create the new empty sample data file. Next, from the data window, we select File, Update from CSV File, selecting Yes to make a backup, and locate and choose the CSV file that contains our sample information. Notice the portable format is already selected. So all we need to do is click New questionnaires to be created if CSV serial numbers are not found in data file, and OK. A view window is then displayed so we can check what the program is going to do. Notice the original region column, which we surrounded by less than and greater than markers, will correctly be ignored as the column heading is not recognized. As this all looks correct, we select Yes to proceed and then close the view window. The program then updates the empty data file, filling our sample entries with information from the sample CSV file. Notice the bar at the bottom of the screen correctly shows records 50, and we select File, Exit Data. QPSMR CATI then asks if we want to build the sample index file, and we select Yes, followed by OK at the message explaining that QPSMR Telin version 2013 or later is required. We then select File, Exit Data to return to the main window. The last thing we will do in this demonstration is to create a quota control file. This will ensure that only respondents who meet certain criteria are interviewed, and valuable CATI resources are not wasted by interviewing respondents who fall outside of the required quotas. We will simply set a quota requirement of 5 respondents for each region. From the Supervisor menu, we select Quota Control, Create Quota File, and as the name Coffee CATI Quota is already displayed, we just save and click OK. Next, we select Supervisor, Quota Control, Edit Quota File, and open the quota file that we just created. As we need to successfully interview 5 respondents from each of the regions, we then select Northwest, hold down the Shift key and select Southeast, so all regions are highlighted, and in the Adjust section click the Wanted radio button and click the +1 button 5 times. Notice the bottles change colour from red to blue. Note, to set or modify quotas for individual responses, you would just select the required response from the text column, then use the buttons to alter the quotas needed. As all of our regions show a wanted quota of 5, the quota file is complete, so we can close. We hope you have found this sample management and quota control demonstration useful. Why not take a look at the next video, number 3 in the QPSMR telephone interviewing series, which demonstrates how to make QUIF files for your interviewers and also how to use the QPSMR Telin software for interviewing. For more information about the products and services available from QPSMR Limited, please visit our website www.qpsmr.ltd.uk.